The millionaire cries at his wife's grave, until he hears a voice behind him say, "I am alive." Marcus Thompson pressed his hands against the cold marble headstone, his shoulders shaking with uncontrollable sobs as the golden autumn leaves danced around his feet. 3 months had passed since Rachel was gone, and yet the pain felt as fresh as the first day. It was then he heard soft footsteps on the dry leaves. A woman's voice, low and hesitant, broke the cemetery's silence. "Marcus." He froze, recognizing that familiar tone, but not daring to turn around. Then the words that would change everything were whispered behind him. "I am alive." The businessman spun around so quickly he almost lost his balance. There stood Jennifer Parker, Rachel's best friend, wearing a light blue dress that fluttered gently in the afternoon breeze. Her brown eyes were red, as if she had cried for hours before finding the courage to appear. "What did you say?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse, struggling to process the words he had just heard. Jennifer swallowed hard, her hands trembling as she held a yellowed envelope. "Rachel didn't die, Marcus. She is alive." Marcus's world collapsed for the second time in 3 months. He leaned against the headstone, feeling his legs go weak. "This is a very cruel joke, Jennifer. I saw the body at the hospital. I organized the funeral." "It wasn't her at the hospital." Jennifer took a step forward, extending the envelope. "It was a woman who arrived at the emergency room without identification, a victim of an accident. Rachel used the confusion to temporarily assume her identity." Marcus snatched the envelope from Jennifer's hands with such force he almost tore it. Inside was a letter written in Rachel's unmistakable handwriting, those delicate letters he knew from the first love notes she sent him 15 years ago. "Marcus, if you are reading this letter, it means Jennifer has finally found the courage to tell you the truth. I needed to know if you would truly miss me, not just as the wife who accompanies you to business dinners or looks pretty by your side at social events." Marcus's hands trembled so much he could barely hold the paper. "Where is she?" he asked without taking his eyes off the letter. "In a town called Mountain Springs, in upstate New York. She's working as a volunteer teacher at a rural school." Jennifer wiped the tears that began to fall. "Marcus, she made me swear I would only tell the truth after 3 months. She wanted to be sure you truly loved her, or if you would just miss the convenience of having a wife." Marcus continued reading the letter, each word like a dagger to his chest. "For 5 years I have felt invisible in our home. You come home late, eat dinner in silence looking at your phone, and fall asleep exhausted. When I try to talk about my dreams, you just nod and change the subject to talk about business. I need to know if I am still important to you, or if I have become just part of the decor of our life." "Why did she do this?" Marcus murmured, more to himself than to Jennifer. "Why didn't she talk to me?" "She tried, Marcus. How many times did Rachel say she wanted to go back to teaching? How many times did she suggest you travel together without work commitments? You always had an excuse." Jennifer clenched her fists. "She felt like a beautiful object in your life, not like a partner." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. Marcus folded the letter and placed it in the inside pocket of his jacket. His heart beat erratically between anger and relief. Rachel was alive, but she had chosen to make him suffer for 3 months to prove a point. "How can I be sure this isn't a lie? How do I know you two aren't deceiving me again?" Jennifer took her phone from her pocket and showed a recent photo. Rachel was in a makeshift classroom, surrounded by children, smiling in a way Marcus hadn't seen in years. She wore a simple blouse with her hair in a ponytail, no makeup, but she radiated a genuine happiness he had forgotten existed. She's using her maiden name, Rachel Harrison. No one there knows she's married to one of the wealthiest businessmen in New York. Jennifer put the phone away. "Marcus, she didn't do this to hurt you. She did it because she was losing herself in the life you built together." Marcus walked in circles around the headstone, running his hands through his hair. 3 months, Jennifer. For 3 months I've been living in hell. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't work properly. I almost sold the company because nothing made sense without her. And that's exactly what she needed to know. Jennifer held his arm. Rachel always thought you only cared about work, that she was just an accessory in your successful life. How could she think that? Marcus stopped walking and looked directly at Jennifer. I worked so hard to give her everything she deserved, the house, the clothes, the jewelry, the trips. But she never asked for any of that, Marcus. What she always wanted was your attention, your time, a real conversation at the end of the day. Jennifer sighed. Remember when you were dating? You'd spend hours talking about everything and anything. When was the last time you did that? Marcus tried to remember, but the memory seemed hazy. The last few years were a monotonous repetition of work, social events, and superficial conversations. I didn't realize I was losing her, he admitted quietly. That's why she did this. To make sure there was still real love between you, not just habit and convenience. Jennifer looked at the headstone. This grave will be removed tomorrow. It was only temporary until I told you the truth. Marcus read the name engraved in the marble again. Rachel Thompson, 1989-2024, beloved wife taken too soon. Each letter now seemed like a cruel lie. What if I hadn't come here today? What if you hadn't told me? I couldn't bear to see you both suffering anymore. Jennifer wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Rachel cries every night. She calls me saying she made a terrible mistake, that she should have talked to you instead of creating this situation. Then why doesn't she come back? Because she's afraid of your reaction. She's afraid you'll never forgive her for faking her own departure. And also, Jennifer hesitated. And also what? Also because she discovered something about herself these 3 months. She discovered she's happy teaching, that she feels useful and fulfilled in a way she hasn't felt in years. She's afraid of going back to her old life and losing herself again. Marcus began to understand the scale of what had happened. It wasn't just a test of love, it was about the entire structure of the life they had built together. What do I do now, Jennifer? How do I fix this? Go to her, but don't go as the businessman Marcus Thompson, who solves everything with money and power. Go as the man who fell in love with the simple girl he met in college. Jennifer turned to leave, but stopped. And Marcus, when you find her, listen to what she has to say. Really listen. Marcus stayed alone in the cemetery until the sun began to set. He contemplated the headstone that would soon be removed, a symbol of 3 months of agony that could have been avoided with one honest conversation. He took out his phone and cancelled all his meetings for the following week, something he hadn't done in years. The next morning, Marcus drove his sports car along the winding roads leading to Mountain Springs. It was a 4-hour drive he made in silence. No music, no work calls, just thinking about the words in Rachel's letter. Each kilometer reminded him of moments he had lost, opportunities for connection he had let slip away. The town was small, surrounded by green mountains and simple houses. Marcus parked in the central square and asked an older man where the rural school was. The man, about 70 years old, looked at him curiously. "Are you related to one of the children?" "I don't remember seeing you around here," the man said, clearly intrigued by the presence of a man in an expensive suit in a town where everyone knew each other. "I'm looking for a teacher, Rachel Harrison." The man's face lit up. "Ah, teacher Rachel. What a special young woman. The children adore her. She arrived here 3 months ago and transformed that school. It's on Pine Tree Road, about 5 kilometers from here." Marcus thanked him and followed the directions. The school was a simple brick building, painted light yellow with a dirt yard where some children were playing. He stopped his car at a safe distance and watched through the window. Rachel was sitting in the shade of a tree, reading to a group of children of various ages. She wore a simple blue cotton dress and sandals, her loose hair swaying gently in the breeze. Her voice reached him, sweet and animated, narrating adventures that made the little ones laugh and clap. It was the same woman who had shared his bed for 15 years, but she seemed completely different. There was a lightness in her gestures, a genuine joy that Marcus hadn't seen in a long time. She wore no makeup, no expensive jewelry, just her being herself. One of the children, a boy about 8 years old, raised his hand. "Teacher Rachel, why are you sometimes sad? Yesterday I saw you crying near the fence." Rachel closed the book and smiled tenderly. "Sometimes adults get sad when they miss someone special, Nathan. But don't worry about me. Do you have a family? asked a little girl. Rachel hesitated for a moment. Yes, I do, but sometimes the people we love are very far away. Why don't you go visit those people? Because sometimes it's complicated, Emily. When you grow up, you'll understand. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Rachel was suffering as much as he was, but she had chosen to suffer far away, turning her pain into something constructive, teaching and caring for those children. He got out of the car but stayed hidden behind a tree, without the courage to approach. Children, let's go inside. Afternoon class is about to begin, Rachel announced, standing up and shaking out her skirt. The children ran ahead, but Rachel stayed behind, gathering the books. It was then that she looked in the direction where Marcus was hiding. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Rachel dropped the book she was holding. Marcus stepped out from behind the tree slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal that might flee at any moment. Rachel stood frozen, her hands trembling. "Hi, Rachel," he said when he was close enough for her to hear his low voice. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Jennifer told me the truth yesterday." Marcus stopped 2 meters from her, respecting the space. "About everything." Rachel closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "I can explain." "You don't need to explain now. I just need to know one thing." Marcus took a step forward. "Are you okay?" The question was so simple, but loaded with so much meaning that Rachel felt the tears well up. How long had it been since someone asked if she was really okay, not just as a social courtesy? "No," she admitted. "I'm not okay. I made a terrible mistake." "We both made mistakes." Marcus looked toward the school, where he could hear the chatter of the children. "Can I talk to you? Not here, but somewhere we can talk without being interrupted?" Rachel looked at her watch. "I have class until 5. There's an inn in town, the Mountain View Inn. Can I meet you there at 6? "I'll be there." Marcus turned to leave, but stopped. "Rachel?" "Yes." "I missed you every day, even though I thought you had left for good." Rachel watched Marcus walk away and get into the car. Her legs were so weak she had to lean against the tree. 3 months planning what she would say if he showed up, and now she couldn't form a coherent sentence. The afternoon passed in slow motion. Rachel tried to concentrate on her classes, but the children noticed she was different, distracted, nervous, looking out the window every few minutes. "Teacher, did you see a ghost?" asked Nathan James during math class. "No, sweetie. Why do you ask?" "Because you're as white as a sheet." Rachel forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a little tired." At 5 o'clock, she dismissed the children and stayed alone in the school, trying to organize her thoughts. Marcus had changed. He was thinner. There was a sadness in his eyes she had never seen before, and the way he asked if she was okay, there was genuine concern there. At the Mountain View Inn, Marcus had already booked a room and was waiting in the small garden overlooking the mountains. When Rachel arrived at 6 on the dot, he stood up from the chair where he was sitting. She had changed her simple dress for a white blouse and a denim skirt. Without makeup, her hair in a loose bun, she looked younger than her 35 years. Or perhaps it was the lightness that 3 months away from the pressures of New York had brought her. "Do you want to sit here, or prefer to go somewhere more private?" Marcus asked, indicating the chairs in the garden. "Here is fine." Rachel sat in a chair facing him but avoided looking directly into his eyes. They stayed silent for a few minutes, the sound of birds and wind in the trees filling the space between them. Marcus studied his wife's face, noticing small changes. She seemed more relaxed, less tense, despite the situation. "Why did you do it, Rachel?" he finally asked. Rachel took a deep breath before answering. "Because I was disappearing, Marcus, ceasing to exist little by little. You'd come home, give me a little kiss on the cheek, ask if I was okay, but you didn't expect a real answer. If I said I was sad or worried about something, you'd say, 'That's nice, honey,' because you weren't even listening." Marcus lowered his head. "I was listening." "Listening? So do you remember when I told you I wanted to go back to teaching? What did you say?" Marcus tried to remember, but the memory failed him. "I don't remember exactly." "You said, 'That's interesting, honey, but you don't need to work. We have enough money.'" as if my dream was just a whim because I was bored. That's not what I meant. I know it wasn't. Rachel finally looked into his eyes. I know you love me, Marcus. But you stopped seeing me. I became part of the scenery of your life. The pretty wife who accompanies you to events, who hosts your clients well at home, who keeps everything organized so you can focus on business. Marcus felt each word like a slap. I worked so hard to give you security, so you wouldn't have to worry about anything. But I didn't ask for financial security. I asked for companionship. I asked you to have dinner with me without your phone on the table. I asked us to talk about our dreams, our fears, about anything that wasn't work. Rachel wiped away an escaped tear. Do you remember the last time we made love for real? Not quick sex because you were tired, but made love? Marcus was silent. He didn't remember. The last years of their intimacy had become mechanical, without real connection. I'm also to blame, Rachel continued. I should have been more direct. I should have forced difficult conversations instead of accepting crumbs of your attention. But when Jennifer suggested this plan, I thought it might be the only way to find out if there was still hope for us. And did you find out? Rachel looked at the mountains in the distance. I found out that I can be happy, that I have value beyond being your wife. These children look at me as if I were special, not because I have expensive clothes or live in a mansion, but because I genuinely care about them. You were always special, Rachel, with or without me. But I had forgotten that. I lived to be the perfect wife of Marcus Thompson. I forgot who Rachel Harrison was. She turned to look at him again. And you? What did you discover in these 3 months? Marcus ran his hands over his face, tired. I discovered that I don't know who I am without you, that everything I've built makes no sense if I don't have you to share it with. I cancelled important meetings, set projects aside, because I simply couldn't concentrate. But that's dependency, not love. Rachel's observation struck him like lightning. She was right. He had become dependent on her presence, on the idea of her, but hadn't invested in the real relationship. You're right, he admitted, and that scares me. I realized I hid in work to avoid dealing with complex emotional issues. It was easier to solve company problems than to understand your feelings. Why? Marcus hesitated. It was a question he had avoided for years. Because I'm afraid of not being enough, of you realizing you could have someone better. Rachel blinked, surprised. What do you mean? You have a degree in education, speak 3 languages, come from a cultured family. I'm the son of a seamstress and a mechanic. I got everything I have by working like crazy, but I always felt I didn't deserve a woman like you. Marcus looked at his own hands. So I buried myself in work to become successful enough to deserve being by your side. Rachel fell silent, processing the revelation. In 15 years of relationship, he had never admitted this insecurity. Marcus, do you think I married you for money? Not exactly, but I think success made me more attractive. I fell in love with you when you were still in your last year of college, working as a waiter at night to pay for your studies, remember? Rachel leaned forward. What attracted me was your determination, your intelligence, the way you made me laugh even when you were exhausted from work and studies. Marcus remembered. They were nights when they would talk until late in the small apartment he shared with 2 roommates. They talked about everything: books, movies, dreams for the future, fears of the present. When you became rich, you changed. You stopped laughing at my silly jokes, stopped telling me about your fears. You became this serious, successful man whom I admired, but with whom I could no longer really talk. I thought that's what you wanted: security, stability. I wanted you. The real Marcus, not the executive version. Rachel got up from the chair and walked to the fence that bordered the garden. You know what hurts me the most? It's that you are an incredible man. Intelligent, generous, loyal. But you yourself don't believe that. Marcus joined her at the fence. And now, how do we fix 15 years of communication mistakes? I don't know if it can be fixed. Rachel spoke softly, almost whispering. I'm afraid that if I go back to New York, to that house, to that life, I'll become invisible again. What if I change? What if I sell the company? If we simplify our life? I don't want you to give up your dreams for me. I want us to find a middle ground. What would that be? Rachel hesitated. I had thought about this during the 3 months in the city. I want to keep teaching. I want you to find a balance between work and personal life. I want us to have dinner together at least 3 times a week. No phones, just talking. I want you to really see me, not just as your wife. And what about what you did? The act, the suffering you caused me. I will never forgive myself for that. It was cruel and unnecessary. I should have had the courage to have a difficult conversation with you instead of creating that situation. Rachel turned to him. Can you forgive me? Marcus looked at her face, seeing the sincerity and regret. I can, if you can forgive me for being an absent husband for so long. Can we try again? Start from scratch? What would that look like? Rachel smiled for the first time since he had arrived. I don't know. Maybe starting with a real date. Like when we were dating. A date? Yes, can you take me to dinner tomorrow night? Some simple restaurant in town where we can talk about anything except work. Marcus smiled too. I would love to, but there's a condition. What? You will tell me about your life here, about the kids, about what makes you wake up happy every morning. I want to meet this version of you that I haven't seen in years. Deal. They stood there, side by side, looking at the mountains as the sun set. It wasn't a happy ending yet. There was a lot of work ahead, many difficult conversations, much forgiveness and rebuilding. But it was a start. Marcus? Yes? Thank you for coming. I know it was brave of you. Thank you for being alive, he replied, and for the first time in 3 months they both truly smiled. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Marcus returned to the inn with a mix of feelings. Relief at knowing Rachel was alive, pain over the situation they had created together, and a strange hope that perhaps they could rebuild something better than they had before. In the small inn room, he took off his suit and put on casual clothes he had brought without planning. Jeans and a simple shirt he hadn't worn in years. When he looked in the mirror, he saw a different man, closer to who he was at 25, when Rachel had fallen in love with him. Across town, Rachel arrived at the small apartment she had rented at the back of Mrs. Dorothy's house, a 70-year-old widow who had become her confidant in recent months. How was the meeting with your husband, dear? Asked Mrs. Dorothy when Rachel came in. Rachel flopped onto the small sofa and told the older woman everything, who listened, nodding with understanding. You know, Rachel, when I was your age, I almost made the same mistake with my late Thomas. He worked too much at the shop, came home covered in grease and tired. I thought he didn't love me anymore. And what happened? One night, I packed my bags and went to my mother's house, said I wouldn't come back until he decided what was more important, work or me. Mrs. Dorothy poured tea for them both. You know how long my tantrum lasted? How long? 2 weeks, because I realized I was punishing us both for something that could be solved with a conversation. The woman laughed. Men can be a bit dense about matters of the heart, dear. They need you to draw them a map. But with Marcus it's different. He really got lost in his work, and you got lost in the role of the perfect wife. You both stopped being people and became characters. Mrs. Dorothy took a sip of tea. The difference is you still have time to find each other again. Rachel lay awake all night, thinking about the woman's words. Maybe Mrs. Dorothy was right. Perhaps she too had gotten lost in the role she thought she had to play as the wife of a successful businessman. The next morning, Marcus woke to the sound of children playing in the street. It was Saturday and there was no school. He decided to walk through the small town, trying to understand how Rachel had lived there for 3 months. The town had a central square with an old church, a few simple shops, a bakery where the smell of fresh bread spread through the streets. People greeted each other, stopped to chat. They weren't in a hurry. It was the opposite of the fast-paced life of New York. At the bakery, Marcus ordered a coffee and a grilled sandwich. The owner, a middle-aged man, struck up a conversation. You're the teacher Rachel's husband, right? I saw you two talking yesterday at the inn. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. How do you know? Everyone knows everyone here. And Rachel mentioned she was married, but that her husband worked very far away. The baker wiped the counter. She's a special young woman. The children adore her, and the parents too. She brought new life to that school. How so? Well, before she arrived, the children didn't like to study. She came up with different ways to teach, uses games, play, puts on little plays with them. Last week, she organized a science fair that got the whole town involved. Marcus felt a pang of pride mixed with sadness. Rachel had always been creative, but in New York she rarely had the chance to show that side. And does she seem happy here? The baker thought for a moment. Happy? I don't know. Content, I'd say. But there's a sadness in her eyes, like someone who left an important part of their life behind. Marcus finished his coffee in silence, absorbing the information. Then he walked through the narrow streets, observing the simple life of that place. Children playing in the street, neighbors chatting over fences, old men playing dominoes in the square. In the afternoon he passed by the school. It was closed, but he could see through the open windows. The walls were decorated with children's drawings, craft projects, handmade educational posters. There was a cheerful energy in that space that contrasted with the cold, luxurious offices Marcus knew. In the late afternoon, Marcus went to pick up Rachel at Mrs. Dorothy's house for the dinner they had arranged. He was wearing jeans and a simple shirt. She wore a floral dress that enhanced her natural beauty. "You look different," she commented as they entered the town's small restaurant. "Different how?" "More relaxed, less tense." Marcus looked at his own hands. Maybe it's the effect of being away from ringing phones and endless meetings. The restaurant was simple, with wooden tables and rustic decor. The menu had home-style dishes, nothing fancy, but made with care. They ordered grilled fish with rice and salad. "Tell me about the children," Marcus asked when the food arrived. Rachel's eyes lit up. "There's Nathan James, who's 8 and is crazy about dinosaurs. He knows the name of every species and their characteristics. Emily Grace, who's 6, draws warrior princesses on all her assignments. Ryan, who's 10, has trouble reading, but is a genius at math." Marcus watched her as she spoke. It had been years since he'd seen her so animated telling a story. Her voice had a contagious energy, her gestures were expressive. And there's Sarah Elizabeth, who's 9 and looks after her younger siblings because her mother works all day. She's too serious for her age, but when she smiles, she lights up the whole room. "How do you feel teaching?" Rachel thought before answering. "Useful, as if every day had a purpose. When I see a child understanding something that was difficult, when they hug me as they leave class, when parents stop me on the street to say thank you, I feel like I'm making a difference. And in New York. Didn't you feel useful?" "I felt ornamental." Rachel moved the food around on her plate. "Pretty, well-dressed, polite, but with no real function, like an expensive vase on a shelf." Marcus lowered his eyes. "I never wanted you to feel that way. I know it wasn't intentional, but it happened." Rachel set her fork down. "Marcus, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Why do you work so much? And don't tell me it's just for the money, because I know it's not." Marcus sighed. It was a question he'd been avoiding for years. "Because when I was a child, my family struggled. Not destitute, but we had difficulties. I swore that when I grew up, I'd never again feel the insecurity of not knowing if there would be money to pay the bills. But you secured that a long time ago. Our bank account could support 3 families for a lifetime." "I know, but it became a compulsion. Every new project, every new client, every increase in revenue gave me a sense of security, as if it were proof that I was worth something." "And what gave you a sense of worth before you became rich?" Marcus thought about the question. "You. When you looked at me and smiled, when you said you were proud of me, when we talked about our dreams. I felt like the most important man in the world." "And when did you stop seeking that feeling from me?" "When I started to think I didn't deserve it, that you were too good for me and that at any moment you'd realize it." Marcus played with the napkin. "So I focused on what I knew how to do well. Work." Rachel reached her hand across the table and touched his. Marcus, do you realize you spent 15 years solving a problem that only existed in your head? Her touch was warm and familiar. Marcus felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time, real hope. "And you?" he asked. "When did you stop fighting for our relationship and decide to accept the crumbs?" Rachel withdrew her hand and took a deep breath. "When I started to believe that being a trophy wife was better than being no wife at all. When I began to value the social approval of having a seemingly perfect marriage more than real happiness. We both made choices based on fear. Exactly. I was afraid of losing you. You were afraid of not deserving me. And in the end, we almost lost each other anyway." They finished dinner talking about simple things, the food, the town, the differences between life in the countryside and in the city. They were conversations they hadn't had in years, without an agenda, without a specific goal, just the pleasure of being together. When they left the restaurant, they walked slowly through the streets lit by old-fashioned lampposts. The night was cool, and Rachel pulled out a light jacket she had brought in her bag. "Can I ask you a question now?" Marcus said when they arrived at Mrs. Dorothy's house. "You may." "If we decide to try again, what do you need from me, specifically?" Rachel leaned against the house gate. "I need you to stop seeing me as something you possess and start seeing me as someone who chooses to be with you every day. I need you to share your fears with me, your insecurities, your joys. I need you to include me in your real life, not just the edited version you present to the world. And I need you to stop accepting less than you deserve, to call me out when I'm being neglectful, to fight for us instead of silently accepting when things aren't working. Are you proposing a real partnership? I'm proposing that we learn to be ourselves with each other, without masks, without roles, just us." Rachel was silent for a moment, processing the proposal. "It's scary." "Why?" "Because it's easier to play a role than to be truly vulnerable. But you are being vulnerable here, with these children. I saw how you are with them, authentic, caring, present. Because they don't judge me. I have no expectations about who I should be. I also don't want you to be anyone other than who you are." Marcus moved a little closer. "Rachel, can I hug you?" She nodded yes. Marcus hugged her slowly, as if he were holding something fragile that might break. Rachel allowed herself to relax in his arms for the first time in months, smelling the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something new, a softness she hadn't felt in years. "I missed you," she whispered against his chest. "I missed who you really are, and I missed who I was when I was with you." They slowly separated. There was no kiss, no grand promises, just a silent acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. "What do we do tomorrow?" Rachel asked. "I don't know. How about we figure it out together?" "No plans? No schedule?" Marcus smiled. "No plans. Just the two of us seeing what happens." "How long has it been since we did that?" "Too long." Rachel went into the house and Marcus returned to the inn. Both slept better than they had in months, not because the problems were solved, but because they were finally facing them together. On Sunday morning, Marcus woke to the sound of church bells ringing. It was something he hadn't heard in years, living in the fortified apartment in New York, where no outside sound could penetrate. He dressed in casual clothes and went to have coffee at the bakery. The same owner from yesterday greeted him like an old friend. "Good morning. How was dinner last night?" "Very good. Thank you." Rachel is a special woman indeed. You're lucky to have a wife like that. Marcus agreed, but for the first time in years he felt he truly understood the luck he had. Not the luck of having a beautiful and polite wife, but the luck of having someone who loved him enough to fight for them, even if in a radical way. After coffee, he walked to Mrs. Dorothy's house. Rachel was in the small front garden, watering the plants. "Good morning," he said, approaching the gate. "Good morning." Rachel smiled. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I expected, and you?" "Me too." They stood there, a little awkward. It was strange trying to reconnect after so many years of living as polite strangers. "Want to take a walk?" Marcus suggested. "I'd love to." They set off without a specific destination. just walking through the small town streets. They passed by the central square, where some families were strolling after the morning service. "What's it like living here?" Marcus asked. "Peaceful, sometimes too much so." Rachel laughed. "At first I couldn't sleep because there was no traffic noise, and everyone knows you. You can't be anonymous." "Do you miss New York?" Rachel thought about the answer. "I miss some things, the theater, the museums, the cultural diversity, but I don't miss the constant stress, the traffic, the feeling that everyone is always rushing somewhere." "And you don't miss our house?" "I miss the idea of our house, of what it could have been if we had really lived in it together, instead of just inhabiting it." Marcus understood what she meant. The mansion they lived in was beautiful, decorated by professionals, with everything money could buy, but it had no soul, no special moments, no cherished memories. "If we went back to New York, what would change?" "Everything or nothing. It depends on us." Rachel stopped walking and looked at him. "Marcus, I don't want to go back to the life we had." "If that's what it is, I'd rather stay here." "What would you like to be different?" "I want a house that's a home, not a showroom. I want dinners where we talk about our day, about dreams, about silly things. I want you to come home and look for me because you want to see me, not just because it's polite to greet your wife. And I want you to tell me when something bothers you, instead of keeping it to yourself. I want you to claim your space, your needs, your dreams. I want you to be my partner, not my dependent." "Does that mean you accept me working?" "I accept you being happy. If working makes you happy, then I want you to work." They arrived at a natural overlook that gave a view of the valley. The landscape was breathtaking, with green mountains stretching as far as the eye could see. "It's beautiful here," Marcus commented. "It is. I come here when I need to think. It's the place where I decided that maybe I should have told the truth sooner, instead of making you suffer for 3 months. "And why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid you would come to me out of obligation, not love. I wanted to be sure you would really miss me, not just miss the convenience of having a wife." Marcus leaned on the wooden fence that protected the overlook. "And now, are you sure?" "I'm sure you suffered, but I don't know if it was for me or for the situation." "How can I prove it was for you?" Rachel turned to look at him. "You can't, and you don't need to. That will be built with time, with actions, with small daily gestures, not with one grand demonstration." "I'm willing to do that work, are you?" "I am, but with conditions." "What are they?" "First, if we decide to try again, we go to couples therapy. We need professional help to deal with patterns we've established over 15 years. Marcus nodded. "I agree. What else?" "Second, I go back to work. Maybe not at a rural school like this one, but I want to teach. It's part of who I am." "No problem. Go on." "Third, you need to find a balance between work and personal life. You don't have to drop everything, but you need to be present when you're with me." "And how do we do that practically?" Rachel had thought about this during the 3 months alone. "We have dinner together at least 4 times a week. No phone, no laptop, no work talk. We sleep in the same bed, not at different times. And at least once a month we do something together that has nothing to do with social or professional obligations." "It sounds like a contract." "It is a contract, because we've both proven we don't know how to rely on love alone to maintain a healthy relationship. We need structure until we learn how to be a real couple." Marcus extended his hand. "Deal." Rachel shook his hand. "Deal." But when they went to let go, they stayed holding hands. It was a simple gesture they hadn't done in years, just holding hands aimlessly, just for the comfort of touch. "Rachel?" "Yes?" "I am truly sorry. For all the suffering, for neglecting you, for making you feel invisible." "I'm sorry too. For lying, for creating all this drama, for not having the courage to confront the problems directly." "Can we forgive each other?" "We can learn to forgive each other, and not to repeat the same mistakes." They stayed at the overlook until the sun began to set, talking about topics they had avoided for years. Fears, insecurities, abandoned dreams, stored up resentments. They weren't easy conversations, but they were necessary. When they returned to town, it was already night. Marcus walked Rachel to Mrs. Dorothy's house. "What happens tomorrow?" he asked. "I have classes as usual. And you? Are you going back to New York?" Marcus had thought about it during the day. "I want to stay a few more days, get to know your life here better, understand what makes you happy if you don't mind." "I don't mind, but I don't want you to stay out of obligation." "I'm staying because I want to, because it's been 3 months since I've had quality time with my wife." The word wife sounded different this time, not like a label or a possession, but as an acknowledgement of a mutual choice. "So I'll see you tomorrow. You can go teach your classes. I'll explore the town, maybe talk to some people, understand how you built a life here." "All right. But Marcus..." "Yes? Don't go as the businessman trying to understand an investment. Go as a person curious about other people," he laughed. "I promised to leave the executive in New York." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. On Monday morning, Marcus woke up with a strange feeling. He wasn't in a hurry. For the first time in years, there were no scheduled meetings, urgent emails, or important decisions waiting for him. It was a strange, almost uncomfortable sensation. He had coffee at the bakery and asked the owner about the town's routine. "Here things are simple," explained Mr. Frank, the baker. "In the morning everyone works. In the afternoon the kids are at school. Late afternoon is time to chat in the square. Evening is for family." "And the school where Rachel works?" "Oh, that school has changed a lot since she arrived. Before, the children didn't like going. Now they arrive excited and leave talking about what they learned." Marcus decided to visit the school, but not to confront Rachel or interfere with her work. He genuinely wanted to understand what she did that brought her so much satisfaction. He arrived at recess time and watched from a distance. Rachel was in the yard supervising the children, but in a way different from the teachers he remembered from his own childhood. She participated in their games, laughed with them, mediated conflicts between the little ones with patience and affection. A boy got hurt while running, and Rachel knelt beside him, cleaned his scraped knee, and comforted him until he stopped crying. Then she made up a funny story about a superhero who had a magic knee, making the boy laugh. Marcus saw in her a facet that had always existed, but that he had forgotten to notice: her natural ability to care, to teach, to inspire. In New York, she used those qualities only with him, and in a limited way. Here, she could be completely herself. After recess, the children went in for their classes. Marcus walked to the school door and greeted the principal, Mrs. Patricia, a lady with graying hair and a welcoming smile. "You must be Rachel's husband," she said. "I'm Patricia, the school principal. Nice to meet you. May I speak with you for a few minutes?" "Of course, come to my office." The principal's office was small and simple, with old but well-kept furniture. There were children's drawings on the walls and a shelf full of textbooks. "I want to thank you for the kindness you've shown Rachel," Marcus began. "For the kindness?" Mrs. Patricia laughed. "We're the ones who should thank her. That girl is an angel. She transformed our school." "How so?" "Well, she arrived here a bit lost, asking to work voluntarily. Said she needed to feel useful. On the very first day, she invented a new way to teach math using pebbles and twigs. The children were enchanted." Mrs. Patricia grew animated, telling him about Rachel. She organized a library with books she brought from New York, created an educational garden where the children learn about plants. Every Friday there's story time, where she tells adventures using costumes she made herself. And how did she end up here? She said she was going through personal difficulties and needed to get away from the big city for a while. We didn't ask for details, but we could tell she was a good-hearted person. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion and guilt. Rachel had created a rich and meaningful life away from him, proving she could be happy on her own. Does she plan to stay? We don't know. She never talks about the future, lives one day at a time, but we hope so. The children have become very attached to her. And her. Does she seem happy here? Mrs. Patricia thought about the answer. Happy? I don't know, content, I'd say. But there's a sadness in her that she can't completely hide, like someone who left an important part of life behind. They were the same words as the baker's. Marcus realized that, even trying to start over, Rachel carried the pain of the separation. "Can I make a suggestion?" Mrs. Patricia asked. "Of course. If you two decide to stay together, don't let her stop teaching. I've seen many women who gave up their dreams for their husbands and later became bitter. Rachel was born to teach." Marcus left the school with a lot to think about. He walked through the town, talked with other residents, went to the health clinic, visited the public library. In every place, people spoke of Rachel with affection and admiration. In the afternoon, when Rachel came out of school, she found Marcus sitting on a large rock near the road. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised. "Waiting for you. I thought we could walk together. How was your day exploring the town?" "Revealing," Marcus answered as they began to walk. "Everyone talked about you, about the impact you've made here. It's a small town. Any new thing becomes a topic. It's not just that, Rachel. You really made a difference in these people's lives. I saw it in the way they talk about you, in the sparkle in the children's eyes when they see you." Rachel was silent for a moment. "It's a good feeling, knowing your existence matters to someone. Your existence always mattered to me, but in a passive way. I was there, so you felt complete. Here, I do things that actively change people's lives." Marcus understood the difference. In New York, Rachel was important to him as company, as support, as an accessory to the life he had built. Here, she was important for her actions, for her contribution, for who she chose to be. "How can we take that to New York?" he asked. "Maybe the question is, why do we need to go back to New York?" The question took Marcus by surprise. "Because our life is there. The company, the house, the friends." "What friends, Marcus? When was the last time we had real friends over? People who visit because they enjoy our company, not because they want a professional favor?" Marcus tried to remember and couldn't. Their social life consisted of corporate events and business dinners. And the company? Can't it be managed remotely, or with less intensity? Or maybe it's time to consider other priorities. "Are you suggesting I abandon everything I've built?" "I'm suggesting you think about what you've really built. Money, professional success, social status, or a life worth living?" They reached the lookout where they had talked the day before. The sun was setting again, painting the sky with orange hues. "Rachel, would you like me to move here?" "I'd like you to move wherever you feel truly happy. If it's here, great. If it's New York but with a different life, also great." "And you? Where would you like to be?" "Where I could teach and where I could have a real marriage with you." "If that's possible in both places, then we can choose." Marcus leaned on the fence and looked at the landscape. "I'm afraid of leaving the company and then regretting it. And I'm afraid of going back to New York and becoming the ornamental wife again. But maybe we can find a middle ground." "How?" "You spend 1 week a month here with me. Learn to relax, to live at a slower pace. I spend 1 week a month in New York, keeping in touch with the culture and city life that I also enjoy. And 2 weeks a month we live together in the place we choose as our base." Marcus considered the proposal. It was radical. It would require huge changes in his way of working and living. But it also offered something he had lost a long time ago: flexibility, adventure, the possibility of a life outside the mold. Would this work financially? "We have enough money to live comfortably without you needing to work 12 hours a day. The question is, can you give up your work addiction?" It was a direct and painful question. Marcus knew he had an addictive relationship with work, using it to avoid emotional issues and validate his self-esteem. "I don't know, but I can try. And I can try to trust again that you love me for who I am, not for the role I play. We have to bet on each other." "Exactly." That night, Marcus had dinner at Mrs. Dorothy's house at Rachel's invitation. The lady prepared a delicious homemade meal and told stories from her life, her 40-year marriage, the difficulties and joys of a simple life. "Do you know the secret to a long marriage?" she asked while serving dessert. "What?" Marcus asked. "Remembering that you're on the same team, not on opposing teams competing against each other, but on the same team fighting together against the problems life brings." "And when one makes a big mistake?" Rachel asked, clearly referring to their own plan. A big mistake only exists if it doesn't serve to teach something important. If it served to open both your eyes, then maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was a winding path to get where you needed to go. After dinner, Marcus and Rachel walked through the town lit by the old streetlights. The night was clear, full of stars that weren't visible in the light pollution of New York. "Can I ask you a personal question?" Rachel said. "Of course. Do you feel like you lost something by becoming rich?" Marcus thought about the question. "I lost simplicity, the ability to find joy in small things, the patience for conversations without a specific purpose." "And what did you gain?" "Financial security, professional recognition, the feeling of having won at life." Marcus stopped walking. "But now I realize that winning at life can have different definitions." "What would your definition be today?" "Waking up next to someone who truly loves me. Sleeping without worries about things I can't control. Having a purpose that goes beyond making more money." "And is that possible?" "With you, yes. Alone, I don't know if I have the courage." Rachel stopped too and looked at him. "Marcus, you have to find your own happiness, with or without me. I can't be responsible for your personal fulfillment, just as you can't be responsible for mine. But can we support each other in that search? We can. But each of us has to do our own inner work." When they arrived at Mrs. Dorothy's house, they stood at the gate talking a little longer. "What do you want to do tomorrow?" Marcus asked. "I want you to watch one of my classes. I want you to see who I am when I'm being completely myself." "Really, I can?" "Mrs. Patricia has already approved, but there's one condition. You're going to help. Not as an observer, but as a participant." Marcus laughed. "I have no experience with children." "Great. Then you'll learn something new." "What will I do?" "I'll explain tomorrow, but get ready to step out of your comfort zone." "I'm starting to like stepping out of my comfort zone." "Good, because our whole life will need to step out of the comfort zone if we decide to start over together." Marcus slept that night thinking about the next morning. How long had it been since he felt anxious about something not related to work? The feeling was strange, but good. On Tuesday morning, Marcus arrived at the school at 8 o'clock. Rachel was waiting for him at the door, wearing simple, comfortable clothes. "Ready for the adventure?" she asked. "What exactly will I do?" "You'll help teach math to the third-grade students, using very unconventional methods." Marcus swallowed hard. "Rachel, I don't know how to talk to children." "You'll learn. And they will teach you, too." When they entered the room, 15 pairs of curious eyes turned to Marcus. The children were around 8 or 9 years old, and were clearly intrigued by the presence of the man in different clothes in their classroom. "Children, this is Marcus. He's going to help us with math class today," Rachel announced. "Is he your boyfriend?" asked a little girl, prompting laughter in the room. Rachel blushed slightly. "He is a special friend." "Hi, everyone," Marcus said nervously. "It's a pleasure to meet you." The children greeted him in unison, and Rachel explained the day's activity. They were going to simulate a market, where the children would be sellers and customers, practicing math operations in a playful way. "Marcus is going to be the owner of a fruit stand," Rachel explained, "and you all are going to buy and sell, calculating change and doing the math." During the activity, Marcus was surprised by the children's intelligence and creativity. Nathan James, the boy passionate about dinosaurs, created a story where dinosaurs also needed to go shopping. Emily Grace drew imaginary fruits and invented crazy prices that created interesting math problems. "Mr. Marcus," called Sarah Elizabeth, the serious girl who took care of her siblings, "in real life, how do we know if the change is right?" The question surprised Marcus with its depth. "Good question, Sarah. We always check by doing the math in our head or asking someone we trust. And if the person tries to trick us, then we need to know math well, so we don't get tricked. That's why it's important to study." Rachel observed the interaction with affection. Marcus was being genuine with the children, treating them with respect, answering their questions seriously. At recess, the children surrounded Marcus with questions. "Are you rich? Do you have a big car? Do you live in a house or an apartment? Do you like teacher Rachel? Marcus answered everything with simplicity and honesty, adapting his answers for their age. When they asked if he liked teacher Rachel, he said, "I like her very much. She is a special person who teaches many important things." "Are you going to marry her?" asked Nathan James. "That is a question only she can answer," Marcus said, looking at Rachel, who was watching the scene from afar. After recess, Rachel gave a language arts lesson using stories created by the children themselves. Marcus was impressed with her method. Instead of using pre-made texts, she encouraged their creativity and then used the stories to teach grammar and comprehension. "How did you learn to teach like this?" Marcus asked when the children left for lunch. "In college, I learned the theory. In practice, I learned that every child is unique and needs different approaches." Rachel organized the materials on the table. "And you? How did you feel?" "Scared at first, then free. They don't care if I'm rich or poor, if I'm professionally successful or not. They just want me to be nice to them. That's exactly it. It's liberating, isn't it?" "Very much. It had been a long time since I felt judged, just as a person, not as a businessman." In the afternoon, Marcus participated in a science class where the children planted seeds and learned about the plant cycle. He got dirty with soil, laughed when a child sneezed dirt onto his face, and genuinely had fun. "Is Mr. Marcus coming back tomorrow?" asked Emily Grace when classes ended. "I don't know, Emily. That depends on many things." "I want you to come back. You are funny." Marcus crouched down to be at her eye level. "Thank you, Emily. You all are funny and very smart too." When all the children had left, Marcus and Rachel were alone in the room tidying up the materials. "What did you think of the experience?" Rachel asked. "Incredible. Tiring, but incredible. How do you have the energy for this every day?" "Because it's rewarding. When I see Nathan James finally understand a difficult division, when Sarah Elizabeth smiles because she managed to read a new word, it's worth all the energy spent. I understand why you chose to stay here. And I understand why you got lost in your work. It's addictive to feel needed, important, capable of solving problems. The difference is that my work mainly benefits me and my clients. Your work benefits these children's future. It's not a competition, Marcus. They're just different choices about how to use our talents." They finished tidying the classroom and walked together along the dirt road that led to town. "Can I confess something to you?" Marcus said. "Of course." "Today was the first day in years that I didn't think about work even once, not a single time. How does it feel?" "Strange, scared, but also light. Like I took a very heavy backpack off my shoulders. Want to know what I think?" "I do." "I think you used work as armor, so you wouldn't have to deal with feelings, relationships, with the more vulnerable part of life." Marcus stopped walking. "And now that I'm without the armor? Now you can choose, put it back on or learn to live without it. I'm afraid to live without it." "Why?" "Because I don't know who I am without work. I don't know what my worth is if I'm not the successful businessman." Rachel turned to look at him. "Marcus, you spent the whole day being valued by 15 children who know nothing about your bank account. They liked you because you were kind, patient, funny. Doesn't that say anything about who you are?" Marcus thought about the day's interactions. The children had truly connected with him over qualities that had nothing to do with professional success. It says, I can be an interesting person, without the titles and achievements. Exactly. And that's scary but also liberating. When they reached town, they stopped at the bakery for a juice. Mr. Frank greeted Marcus like an old friend. "So, how was the day at the school?" "Incredible. I didn't know teaching could be so much fun." Rachel revolutionized that school. Before the children went because they had to. Now they go because they want to learn. "Mr. Frank," Rachel said, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, my dear." "Do you think a person can be happy with a simple life, even if they had a more sophisticated life before?" Mr. Frank laughed. "Rachel, I lived in New York for 10 years when I was young. I worked in a factory, earned good money, had a nice apartment. But I was unhappy. I came here, opened this small bakery, make less money, but I wake up every day satisfied with my life. What changed? In New York, I work to have things. Here, I work to serve people. I make the bread that feeds families. I talk with the neighbors. I participate in the community. I'm useful in a way that matters. Marcus absorbed the man's words. And you don't miss the big city? I miss some things. The movies, the concerts, the bustle. But I don't miss the stress, the constant competition, the feeling that it's never enough. Is it possible to have both? The best of the big city and the best of the small town? Of course it is, but you have to make choices. You can't have everything at the same time without getting lost in the middle. When they left the bakery, Marcus was thoughtful. What are you thinking about? Rachel asked. About what our life would be like if we moved here. Do you really want to know? I do. It would be simpler financially, but richer emotionally. You'd have to learn to be happy without the adrenaline of big deals, but you could discover satisfactions you don't know. And you? I could keep teaching, but I'd lose easy access to the urban culture I also enjoy. We would have to make regular trips, so we wouldn't feel isolated from the world. It seems any choice involves sacrifices. Any conscious choice involves sacrifices. The problem is when we make sacrifices without realizing it, without choosing. They arrived at the now familiar overlook and sat on a rock to watch the sunset. Rachel, can I ask you something that might be painful? Go ahead. At any point during these 3 months, did you think about giving up on us? About truly starting a new life? Rachel took a deep breath. I did, several times, especially when I saw how it was possible to be happy just being myself. What made you not give up? The certainty that you are a good man who lost his way, and the hope that there was still real love between us, even buried under years of mutual neglect. And now, after these days of talking, do you still have hope? I have more than hope. I have a conscious bet. I choose to bet on us, but with new rules. What kind of rules? Total transparency. When one of us is unhappy, we speak up immediately. When we need space, we ask for it without guilt. When we want something, we communicate it clearly instead of waiting for the other to guess. And if it still doesn't work out, then at least we'll know we tried for real, with all our cards on the table, and we can part in peace, knowing we gave our best. Marcus took her hand. Rachel, I want to try. For real this time. Me too. But with no pressure to make it work. If we force it too much, it might break. So we let it happen naturally? We'll give our best and let the outcome be what it will be. That night, Marcus called his partner in New York and asked him to run the company alone for 2 weeks. He said he was resolving important personal matters and couldn't focus on work at that moment. His partner's reaction was surprise and concern, but Marcus was firm. For the first time in 15 years, his personal matters were coming first. What are you going to do in these 2 weeks? Rachel asked when he told her about the call. I'm going to learn how to live. I'll help you at the school if you'll let me. I'll get to know every person in this town. I'll discover what it's like to wake up without rushing, to eat slowly, to talk without an agenda. It will feel strange at first. I know. But if I want a different life, I need different experiences. And after these 2 weeks? I don't know. We'll see how I feel, how you feel, what kind of life we want to build together. No rigid plans. No rigid plans. Just general directions and a willingness to adjust the path. It was a completely different approach from what Marcus was used to, but he felt it was exactly what he needed. During the following week, Marcus developed a routine he never imagined possible. He woke without an alarm, had coffee leisurely, helped Rachel at the school in the morning, had lunch with Mrs. Dorothy, spent the afternoons exploring the area or talking with local residents. He met the town's blacksmith, who taught him ancient metalworking techniques. He visited a farm where he learned about sustainable agriculture. He played dominoes with the gentleman in the square and listened to stories from decades past. How are you feeling? Rachel asked at the end of the first week. Confused, but good. It's like I'm meeting a version of myself I didn't know existed. What version is that? A version that has patience, that can listen to a long story without getting anxious to reach the end, that finds joy in simple things. And the work anxiety, the need to always be productive. It's still there, but it's fading, like background noise that's getting quieter each day. That's normal. You spent 15 years conditioned to one way of living. It will take time to reprogram. On the second weekend, Marcus suggested they go to New York for Sunday. I want to see our house with new eyes, and I want you to see how it's possible to live there differently. Rachel agreed, curious to see what it would be like to return to the old environment after 3 months away. The 4-hour trip was peaceful, full of conversations about the future. When they arrived at the apartment in New York, Rachel felt a tightness in her chest. Everything was exactly as she had left it, clean and organized by the housekeeper, but lifeless, soulless. "It's strange to be here," she commented, walking through the rooms. "Why?" "It feels like a movie set, not a home. Everything is very beautiful, but without real personality." Marcus looked around with the eyes of someone who had just experienced the welcoming simplicity of life in the countryside. The expensive, impeccable decor now seemed cold and impersonal to him. "We can change that," he said. "Make this place more ours." "How?" "Our photos instead of decorator paintings. Books we actually read instead of encyclopedias to impress guests. Plants we care for together. Comfortable furniture instead of just beautiful." Rachel smiled. "Are you proposing to humanize our house?" "I'm proposing to turn our house into a home." They spent the day reorganizing some spaces, removing objects that made no sense to them, and planning changes that better reflected their personalities. "You know what I miss most here?" Rachel said in the late afternoon. "What?" "The sound of children, the smell of home-cooked food, the feeling that the place is alive. We can have all that here, too. Maybe not children in the apartment, but we can invite loved ones, cook together, create happy memories in this space." "What about business dinners, social events?" "We can attend the ones that truly make sense for us and decline the ones that are just social obligations." "Could you do that? Reduce the corporate social life?" "I can try. If the alternative is having a real social life with people who care about us as people, not as business contacts." That night, they ate a simple meal they prepared together in the apartment. It was the first time in years they had cooked together, laughing at mistakes, improvising ingredients, in no hurry to finish. "It's good," Marcus said, tasting the pasta they made. "It is. And you know why?" "Why?" "Because we made it together. The flavor of food changes when it's made with care and company." "How do you know that?" "Mrs. Dorothy taught me. She says food absorbs the feelings of the cook." "So this pasta is full of hope," Marcus commented. "And love that's being rediscovered," Rachel added. After dinner, they sat on the apartment balcony, which overlooked the lit-up city. It was an expensive view Marcus had always appreciated, but which now seemed less important than the view of the mountains in Mountain Springs. "Could you be happy splitting time between the two places?" Rachel asked. "I think so. As long as it's truly splitting, not just using the countryside as an escape from an urban life that makes me unhappy." What would that split look like in practice? Marcus had thought about it during the week. 2 weeks a month in New York, focusing on work but without excess. 2 weeks in the countryside, slowing down and regaining perspective. And you? I could teach in New York too. There are many schools needing creative teachers, and spending time in the countryside teaching me about simple living. It would be a very unconventional life. Even better. Conventions weren't working for us. What if people think it's strange? Let them. We're not living to please other people. It was a hypothetical conversation, but both felt it was becoming more and more real. "Rachel, can I ask you an important question?" "Go ahead." "Have you truly forgiven me? For the years of neglect, for making you feel invisible?" Rachel thought about her answer. "I'm learning to forgive. It's not something that happens all at once. It's a process. But I choose to keep forgiving because I see you're genuinely trying to change. And you? Have you forgiven yourself for the drama you created? I'm learning that too. It's hard to forgive myself for causing so much unnecessary pain, but I understand I did what I thought I needed to do with the emotional tools I had at the time. Can we forgive each other together?" We can support each other in the process of forgiveness, but each of us has to do our own inner work. How? Maybe couples therapy like we talked about. Maybe regular, honest conversations about our feelings. Maybe symbolic rituals to leave the past behind. What kind of rituals? I don't know. Something that marks the end of the old life and the beginning of the new one. A trip together to a new place, renewing our wedding vows, symbolically burning things that represent past mistakes. I like the idea of renewing vows, but not as a big social event, something intimate, just the two of us, affirming our commitment to the new versions of ourselves. Where would we do it? Where we reconnected? In Mountain Springs, at the lookout point where we had our most honest conversations. Rachel smiled. That's a beautiful idea. Would you be willing? I would, but not now. When we're sure we're doing it for the right reasons, not because we're emotionally vulnerable. How long do you think we need? I don't know. Maybe 6 months living this new dynamic, seeing if we can maintain the connection even with the challenges of real life. So we have a plan. We have a direction. We'll build the plan together, day by day. On Sunday, before heading back to the countryside, Marcus stopped by the office to sort out some pending matters. Rachel went with him, curious to see the environment where he spent most of his life. The office was impressive, a panoramic view of the city, designer furniture, cutting-edge technology. But it was also impersonal and cold, with no personal photos, no objects that revealed the personality of the person who worked there. Is this where you spend 12 hours a day? Rachel asked. Used to. I'm rethinking that now. It's beautiful, but it looks like a movie set. Like our house. Exactly. Places to impress, not to live in. Marcus quickly organized the essential documents and delegated the rest for the following week. It was the first time he'd left the office without taking work home. How does it feel to leave all this behind, even temporarily? Rachel asked as they walked back to the car. Scared but liberated, like I'm walking out of a gilded prison. Was it really a prison? It was a prison I built myself, using professional success as personal validation, money as emotional security. And now, what will you use for validation and security? I don't know yet. Maybe that's the adventure, discovering who I am without those crutches. The drive back to Mountain Springs was reflective. They both felt they had crossed an invisible line, made a decision without explicitly stating it. We're really doing this, aren't we? Rachel said as the lights of the small town appeared on the horizon. Doing what? Choosing a different life. Betting on a love we thought we'd lost. We are. And do you regret it? No. I'm scared, but I don't regret it. Scared of what? That it's too good to last. That we'll discover we were more compatible in fantasy than in reality. And if we discover that, then at least we'll know the truth, and we can make decisions based on reality, not on illusions or longing. That's brave of you. It's brave of us. We're doing this together. When they arrived at Mrs. Dorothy's house, the woman was waiting for them with a knowing smile. How was your trip home? Revealing, Rachel answered. We discovered our house needs to become a home. And we discovered our life needs to become a real life, not just a sequence of obligations, Marcus added. Does that mean you're going to try again? Rachel and Marcus looked at each other. It means we're going to try something new, Rachel replied. Not a return to what we were, but a building of what we can be. That's good, said Mrs. Dorothy. You're too young to accept a marriage without love, but too old to believe that love alone solves everything. What solves it then? Marcus asked. Love with conscious work, patience with honesty, forgiveness with real change in behavior. They were wise words from someone who had lived a long and happy marriage. That night, Marcus and Rachel talked late into the night about the practical details of their decisions, how to organize his work to allow for more flexibility, how she could teach both in the countryside and in New York, how they would divide their time between the two places. There's an important detail we need to decide, Marcus said. What? When are we going to tell the people close to us about what happened? Your parents, my brother, our few true friends. Rachel had avoided thinking about that. It's embarrassing to admit I faked my own departure. But it's necessary. They deserve to know the truth, and we need total honesty to start over. How will we explain it? With the truth, that our marriage was in crisis, that you made a radical decision to make us see it, that we are working to rebuild our relationship. They'll judge us. Some might. Others will root for us. But we can't control people's reactions. What if someone can't accept it and pulls away? Then we'll find out who our true friends are. It was another layer of vulnerability they would have to face. Marcus, are you sure it's worth going through all this? The difficult conversations, the judgments, the radical life changes? For you, for us, for a chance at real love? It's worth it. What if it doesn't work? Then at least we will have truly tried, and we will have learned a lot about ourselves in the process. You've changed, you know. How so? The Marcus from New York would never accept so much uncertainty, so much emotional risk. He always wanted to control every outcome. Marcus thought about the observation. Maybe I'm learning that some important things in life can't be controlled, only lived. It's a hard lesson for someone used to solving everything with planning and money. But it's a necessary lesson. My way of controlling everything was making me lose the things that really matter. Like what? Like spontaneity. Like the ability to be surprised. Like the trust that you love me for who I am, not for what I have. I've always loved you for who you are, Marcus. The problem is you forgot who that was. And now I'm trying to remember. Not remember. Rediscover. You're not the same man from 20 years ago, nor should you be. But you can recover the good qualities you lost along the way. What qualities? Your curiosity, your sense of humor, your ability to dream, your genuine kindness. Do you think I still have those qualities? I saw all of them this week. When you played with the children at the school, when you listened to Mr. Frank's stories without hurry, when you took a genuine interest in the lives of the townspeople. Marcus felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. Pride in himself, not for the results he had achieved, but for the person he was choosing to be. Rachel, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. Because I believed there was still hope, even when I didn't believe it myself. I didn't give up because I saw who you really are beneath all the stress and competition, and I couldn't live knowing I'd thrown away a true love without trying to save it. Even at the risk of me not matching your effort. Even then, because some risks are worth taking. And what if I had reacted badly when I found out the truth? If I had gotten angry and left? Then I would have known I was right to leave, that you really didn't love me enough to try to understand my pain. It was a risky test. It was, but it worked. Not the way I planned, but it worked. How was it not the way you planned? I thought you would come after me immediately, that we'd have a romantic reconciliation, and that we'd go back to our old life more in love than ever. And what happened was different. Very different. We discovered our old life didn't work for either of us, that we needed much deeper changes than just renewing the passion. And is that better or worse than what you expected? It's more frightening, but also more real. A superficial reconciliation wouldn't have lasted. What we're building now has a chance to last forever. Or to end for good. Or to end for good, Rachel agreed, but with honesty and mutual respect. It was a mature and courageous perspective that showed how much both had grown in those weeks. Rachel, can I make you a promise? You can. I promise that if I ever start neglecting you again, getting lost in work, treating you like an accessory in my life, you will confront me immediately, without waiting, without accepting crumbs. And I promise that if I ever feel invisible again, I will talk directly to you instead of creating dramatic situations. I promise I will include you in my important decisions, consult you about my plans, see you as a partner, not a dependent. And I promise I will fight for us when things get tough, instead of passively accepting what doesn't make me happy. I promise I will work on my self-esteem, so I don't need constant external validation. And I promise I will pursue my own fulfillment, so I don't depend only on you to be happy. They were deep promises that went far beyond traditional wedding vows. "Do you know what these promises mean?" Rachel asked. "That we're taking the fresh start seriously. That we're taking responsibility for our own emotional problems instead of waiting for the other to fix us. Is that what adults do in a mature relationship? It's what we should have done from the beginning. It's never too late to learn, as long as we're willing to be vulnerable and honest. And are we? We're discovering that we are." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Rachel made the right decision by faking her own death to save her marriage? We would love to read your honest opinion.